Hello. Monsieur le directeur général.
Director General. Please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen.
Por favor, siéntase. Monsieur le directeur.
Director General, Mr. Gilbert Ungbo, Secretary General of the Conference, Ministers, Excellencies, Delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to welcome you to the opening sitting of the 114th International Labour Conference. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Anoucheh Carvar, and I am the delegate of the French government to the International Labour Organization. In my capacity as Chair of the Governing Board of the International Labour Office for the period 2025 to 2026, I have the honour of officially opening this 114th International Labour Conference.
Je profite de...
Please allow me to take this opportunity to welcome you all to Geneva and to our conference. I'm quite convinced that this conference will meet your expectations and the trust that you have placed in it. Without further ado, let's proceed with the first item on this morning's agenda, which calls upon the conference to elect its president. I would like to begin by giving the floor to the Government of Australia, which currently holds the chairmanship of the government group so that its representative can present the group's candidate. You have the floor, madam.
Very much, Madame. On behalf of the government group, I am honoured to present the nomination of His Excellency, Mr. Juan Costilla, Minister of Labour and Social Security of Uruguay, for the presidency of this 114th session of the conference. The Minister has the unanimous support of the government group. Minister Castillo brings to this role a unique and valuable perspective, having served across 2 constituencies of this organisation. Starting his career in the maritime sector, he worked at the National Ports Authority and became a trade union leader of the United Port Workers and Related Industries Union. He was also a long-standing member of the Executive Committee of the Inter-Union Workers Plenary National Workers Convention. Minister Castillo also served as National Labour Director at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security of his country. With a distinguished career bridging the labour and political spheres, Mr. Castillo was elected Senator in 2017 and subsequently appointed Minister in 2025. The Government Group is confident that Minister Castillo has all the necessary skills and expertise to successfully guide the work of this session of the conference and is honoured to nominate him as President. Thank you.
Je vous remercie.
I thank you, Madam Ambassador. I would now like to turn to the spokesperson of the employers group in order to know if their group can subscribe to the candidature and support it. I give you the floor, Mr. Thorns.
Thank you, Chair. The employers group fully endorses the nomination.
Je vous remercie.
I thank you. I now call upon the spokesperson of the workers group to indicate if their group approves and supports this proposal. I give you the floor, Ms. Pasquia.
Good morning, all. On behalf of my group, I can wholeheartedly support this candidacy, and we certainly look forward to our good cooperation. Thank you.
Je vous remercie.
I thank you. The candidacy proposed by Her Excellency Ambassador Claire Walsh with unanimous support of the government group has garnered the agreement of the employers and workers groups. There not being any other candidate, it is my great pleasure to declare Mr. Juan Castillo, Minister of Employment and Social Security of the Oriental Republic of Uruguay, President of the 114th session of the International Labour Conference.
Je tiens à lui.
I would like to address my most heartfelt congratulations to you, and I would like to invite you to take on the presidency now of this opening sitting of the 114th session of the International Labour Conference.
Buenos días.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Director General and Secretary General, Mr. Gilbert Ongbo, Honourable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by thanking you for the trust placed in me by having conferred upon me the important task of presiding over this session of the International Labour Conference. Rest assured that I will spare no effort to ensure that this conference contributes to the organisation's mandate and once again highlights the relevance and valuable contribution of the organisation to the multilateral system. We shall now proceed with the election of the vice presidents of the conference in line with paragraph 2 of Article 3 of the Standing Orders. I would now like to ask the conference secretary, Mr. Luca Bormioli, to read the nominations of the different groups. Thank you very much, President.
Vice presidents of the 114 sessions of the conference are the following. For the governing group, we have Her Excellencies Ms. Nahida Shoban, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Bangladesh to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva. For the employers group, Ms. Kristen Kaufman from the United States of America. For the workers group, Mr. Gerardo Martinez from the Republic of Argentina. Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Gracias a usted.
My thanks to you. As there are no objections, can we consider these nominations adopted? They are adopted. Thank you very much. I would now like to extend my most sincere congratulations to my fellow members of the board and ask them to come up here to take their places on the podium.
Bien, ha llegado el momento.
Well, it's now time for us to receive the nominations for officers from the government group, the employers group, and the workers group, respectively. I'd like to remind you that each group is solely responsible for these nominations. Please now look at the screens in the room showing the names of the persons in question.
Bien, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. The next task is the constitution of the standing and technical committees, which will deal with the items on the conference's order of business. In the conference's standing orders, we've foreseen the constitution of the following standing committees: the General Affairs Committee, the Credentials Committee, the Drafting Committee, the Standards Committee, and the Financial Matters Committee. According to Article 7.1 of the Rules of the Conference, a General Affairs Committee comprising 28 members designated by the government group, 14 members by the employers group, and 14 members designated by the workers group will also be constituted. This is in line with the same balance in the governing body. In line with Article 7.2 of the rules of the conference, the General Affairs Committee addresses all the issues referred to it by the conference and will draft reports on them. This year, as we start the conference, there is no specific subject to refer to that committee. But obviously, if the conference decides to refer any other matter to it, the committee will meet as necessary. In light of this, I would now like to call upon the Secretariat to show the members of that committee on the screen, should it have to meet.
Bien, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. With regard to the Credentials Committee, the groups have communicated the candidates of their members to the Secretariat. So I'd like to ask the Secretariat now to show those names on the screen.
Seguimos adelante.
We can now proceed. I would like to recall that the drafting committee is established in line with Article 9 of the standing orders. The drafting committee will comprise up to 3 delegates or government technical advisors, or 3 delegates or technical advisors from the employers group, and up to 3 delegates or technical advisors from the workers group, which are designated by the Commission, which conveys a text to be examined, as well as by the reporter of the rapporteur of the committee in question and the legal advisor of the conference. In this meeting of the conference, there is just one standard setting committee, which I'll refer to in a moment. When it comes to the Standards Committee, its provisional composition has been published on the website of the conference, waiting for the definitive approval during this first session.
Por último,
and lastly, the Financial Affairs Committee, which is exclusively composed of government delegates to the conference. So there's no need to register for that committee.
pasamos ahora a la...
We will now move on to the constitution of the technical committees. Without a doubt, the conference will deem it timely to constitute the following committees so that they can examine a report on items 4, 5, and 6, respectively, of the order of business. So that is a committee for the recurrent discussion on social dialogue and tripartism.
Una comisión normativa.
A standard setting committee which for the second year will examine the item concerning decent work in the platform economy. And a committee for the general discussion on the transformative program for achieving gender equality in the world of work.
La composición provisional.
The provisional composition of all the committees has been published on the conference's website, awaiting definitive approval by each committee in their opening sessions respectively. As there have been no objections, can I consider that the conference approves this establishment of the committees mentioned, as well as the drafting committee, with the proposed composition? Adopted. Thank you very much. Pursuant to Article 2, paragraph 2K of the standing orders of the conference, the governing body has invited certain non-governmental international organizations to be represented at this conference. Can I consider that pursuant to paragraph 6 of Article 36 of the Rules of Procedure, the conference adopts the invitation to those organisations, which is shown on the website of the conference, to be represented here and in the relevant committees? Adopted. As the conference will recall, in its 113th session, upon the recommendation of the governing body, the appropriate provisions were adopted to allow employers and workers of Myanmar to contribute to the work of the International Labour Conference. Similarly, I should recall that when the governing body decided to make such a recommendation to the conference, it proposed that these provisions would be renewed until there was a new decision from the Credentials Committee. For the current session, the governing body, at its 356th meeting, considered that since the Credentials Committee has not taken a decision concerning the acceptance of the powers of the delegates of Myanmar, or the credentials of the delegates of Myanmar, the recommendation made by the governing body in its 352nd meeting held in November of 2024 is still valid for this 114th session of the conference. Thus, in line with the recommendations made by the governing body, the conference is invited to request that the officers and in their respective committees, the bureaus of the General Affairs Committee, should it meet the conference's request, and the Standards Committee adopt any request received from an international organization of employers and workers to make a statement through the representatives or workers of Myanmar, that it is allowed and the declaration be made in the same conditions as those given to delegates of the employers or workers group or members of the committee as relevant. And B, requests that the Standards Committee allows international organizations of employers or workers who wish to make a statement through the representatives of the employers or workers from Myanmar be given the same speaking rights as the members from those groups in the committee. As there are no objections, can I consider that the conference adopts these provisions? Adopted. Thank you. At its 356th meeting in March of this year, the governing body recommended that in line with Article 52, paragraph 2 of the Rules of Procedure of the Conference, the withdrawal of the Convention on Labour Standards for Non-Metropolitan Territories from 1947, that is Convention number 83, be directly examined by the plenary. Following examination of this issue, the conference will decide if it will refer the formal proposal for withdrawal to a nominal vote, which cannot be held until the following day after that on which the preliminary decision has been adopted. The conference will examine the report containing the proposal at the plenary on Wednesday, 3rd of June, before we start the debate on the report of the President of the Governing Body and the Director General's report. and so the nominal vote is scheduled or will be scheduled for the 5th of June. Can I consider that the conference adopts the provisions concerning examination of withdrawal of Convention 83 at its plenary session on the 3rd of June, and that if it decides to hold a nominal vote, that vote be held on the 5th of June? Adopted. Thank you very much.
Distinguidos delegados,
Distinguished delegates, I would like to bring document D1 published on the conference's website on the 15th of May to your attention. It recalls that the governing body at its 356th meeting recommended that the conference suspend the application of certain provisions in its standing orders at the current meeting. These provisions will be suspended as necessary so that members of the delegation of the State of Palestine can exercise the rights and privileges conferred upon them by paragraph 3 of the resolution on the condition of Palestine at the ILO and participating rights of Palestine in ILO meetings adopted by the conference in its 113th session. As there are no objections, can I consider that the conference decides to suspend those provisions in paragraph 3 of document D1?
ha solicitado la palabra la delegada.
Delegation of Israel has asked for the floor.
Mr. President, I'd like to first congratulate you and the Vice President on assuming your position. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Israel is not in the position to support the proposal to suspend the rules for obvious reasons. We call for a vote.
Entiendo que el distinguido
I understand that the distinguished delegate does not wish to join the consensus on suspending the provisions listed in paragraph 3 of document D1. Would any other delegation wish to take the floor at this point? I see that the delegate of the United States is requesting the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We would like to second the vote.
¿Algún otro delegado de la conferencia?
Any other delegate at the conference wishing to take the floor? Argentina.
Buenos días, señor.
Good day, President. We support the motion.
Gracias a usted.
Thank you. Any other delegates?
A ver, en consulta.
Having consulted the officers, we understand that the initiatives Proposals have been put and seconded. At the same time, we see there is a strong majority agreement with regard to respecting the decisions taken at the previous conference. So my question is the following. Could we seek a consensus, bearing in mind that consensus is not equivalent to unanimity, and that we could also always allow for a footnote to reflect the position of certain delegates or countries?
Israel.
Israel, you have the floor.
Mr. President, there is no consensus on the matter, and I consider there is no unanimity on the matter. I want to remind others here that we are talking about suspending the rules. Of course, we call for a vote. Thank you.
Las disculpas.
Apologies, delegates of the conference. We had to have a group consultation. Pakistan? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations to you and other members of the Bureau on your election. Since you had asked if there are any other comments from the floor in response to the interventions made earlier, Pakistan is making this statement on behalf of the OIC group. The issue before the conference, Mr. President, today is not the status of Palestine, nor is it a reconsideration of the resolution adopted by this conference at its 113th session in 2025. Last year, after due consideration, the conference adopted Resolution 2 on the status of Palestine in the ILO and the participation rights of the Palestine in ILO meetings. Through that resolution, the conference decided that Palestine would participate as a non-member observer state and conferred upon it a number of participation rights and privileges. The same resolution also decided that the relevant provisions of the standing orders would be suspended to the extent necessary to give effect to those rights. The matter was subsequently considered by the governing body, which recommended the specific suspensions now before the conference pursuant to Article 69(2) of the standing orders. The proposal before us is therefore an implementation measure flowing directly from decisions already taken by the conference and the governing body. The question before delegates today is thus a procedural one: whether to give practical effect to rights already granted by the conference. It is not an opportunity, Mr. President, to reopen, revisit, or relitigate decisions that have already been duly adopted by the competent organs of the organization. Respect for the decisions of the conference is fundamental to the orderly conduct of our proceedings and to the institutional integrity of the organization. Reopening settled matters each time implementation measures are considered would create uncertainty and undermine the finality of the conference's decisions. We therefore respectfully, Mr. President, request that discussion remain confined to the item before the conference and that the conference proceed with consideration of the proposed suspensions as recommended by the governing body. I thank you for your attention.
Bien.
Well, we would repeat to conference delegates that we will not be opening a debate. There was a matter raised which we had to communicate, and in order to follow our agenda, we're trying to come up with a proposal so that we can proceed with our work. We note the contributions that have been made, and we are discussing a procedural issue so we can continue with the work of our agenda. The President's team has consulted on this, and it seems to us to be in order that based on the request for a vote, we should arrange tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're working from 10 until the afternoon, working all day. And on Wednesday, we could then announce the outcome of the vote.
Tengo entendido que hay dos carteles más.
I can see two requests: Bangladesh and Niger. And I would make the same request again. We do not have time set aside. So we are for this discussion at this point. So we hope to be able to conclude this in 2 minutes. But please, Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations on your appointment and your team over here. We really appreciate the timekeeping efforts. Time is precious. So is the importance of significant norm setting in multilateral systems. We second the debate opened by OIC. I understand it's not a time to open the debate and delay the process, but we would urge the plenary through you to reconsider once a decision has been made in one of the ILCs. Opening that and that too to reverse it undermines the collective will of the states, and that should be honored, and it sets a really unprecedented precedent. We understand the time shortage that you are facing, but we would urge the plenary to give a chance to deliberate and probably dwell upon this particular argument a bit more before we proceed to the voting. And also I would like to urge, before you proceed to the voting, the legal basis of going to the vote before you take the all the arguments over here on the floor. Thank you so much, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you. The delegate of Niger has the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. I'd like to add my voice to those who already congratulated you on your election as president of our conference, and you can rest assured of my delegation's support. And then in my national capacity, representing the government of Niger, we would align ourselves with the statement made by Pakistan on behalf of the OIC. And finally, speaking on behalf of the African Group supports the decision of the International Labour Conference to extend the right to observer non-state members, Palestine, and we support the recommendation from the governing body to suspend the provisions of the standing orders necessary for the implementation of the decision taken by the conference allowing the state of Palestine to enjoy and exercise rights conferred by the resolution of the International Labour Conference. We've heard no valid arguments that would allow the decision allowing for the implementation of another decision that has already been taken to be stopped. We support your call to proceed on the basis of consensus, given the vast majority support for the decision under discussion. If we do need to move to a vote, we would call on all African delegations to support the right of Palestine to be able to enjoy the rights that the decision confers. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Delegate of Egypt has the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, thank you, President, for giving me the floor. We congratulate you as President of this session. I'm talking to you on behalf of 22 Arab countries, members of the ILO. In the last session, you adopted resolution on the legal status of Palestine and the rights of participation in the meetings of the ILO. And under this resolution, the conference decided for Palestine to participate as a non-member observer state, giving it rights and privileges, and also suspending the rules of the standing orders. And the governing body has considered this matter and recommended the suspension of a number of relevant rules. Therefore, the proposal tabled before us today is just a procedural resolution to implement previous resolutions adopted by the conference and the governing body. Therefore, the Arab group calls on all the members of the conference to adopt the resolution by consensus in order to ensure the smoothness of our work, and also to allow Palestine to participate as a non-member observer, given the support of the members here. Thank you.
Solicito que nos den
Well, if you could allow us 1 or 2 minutes, just so the officers can consider this matter.
Bien, muchas
Well, thank you very much for the entire conference's and all its delegates' efforts. Even though I wasn't informed of this previously, I'm pleased to inform you that we and all the officers of the conference realize that a debate of this characteristics take place on the first day of the conference. Not all the situations are set out, obviously, in the standing orders or rules of a conference. Nevertheless, I think that there is a spirit here to try and resolve this issue in the best possible fashion so that we can proceed with the work which has been undertaken in the various committees by the different groups, the employers and workers, so that we can move on with our business today. I don't think that we are trying to focus on there not being a consensus on a particular subject, but even though there are different opinions, and even if there isn't unanimity in the conference, and even if there are different opinions among the officers, we have been given the responsibility of making a proposal. This is part of our responsibility as the officers and president of the conference. So you have shown the patience through your opening interventions, and those who supported the initial motion, as well as all those who have taken the floor subsequently, who have tried to fashion the debate in order to resolve this issue. Nevertheless, we haven't managed to find unanimity, and we see that everyone has their desires. And even though we try to find a consensus despite our differences, we're not going to place any obstacles to debate. So that's why I would like to say that we deeply appreciate the 5 statements that were made. We deeply appreciate the efforts of those who didn't support the initial motion and who were trying to find ways around it. We haven't managed to achieve unanimity. So that is why the officers of the conference propose that, as there's clearly no consensus on this issue, and having held consultations, it is unavoidable to put the suspension of these provisions of standing rules to a vote. So we will hold that vote tomorrow morning on the 2nd of June at 10 a.m. It won't be announced again, and voting will conclude by 5 p.m. I don't think that we will be able to give you the outcome before the opening session of Wednesday. As we had said, there'll be no plenary session tomorrow. So this will be put to a vote.
President, let me just briefly explain the voting procedures, although we will reach out to delegates with further information this afternoon and tomorrow. You will be asked to cast one vote on the proposed suspension of the provisions of the standing orders as presented in document D1. The vote will be by show of hands by electronic means through the usual internet-based platform. Once the vote opens, all delegates entitled to vote will receive an email to the email address provided in their credentials. The email will contain the link necessary to cast your votes. You must simply click on the link in the email to be redirected to the voting platform and enter the 4-digit code which you will find on your badge. Persons entitled to vote can do so using their own device, which can be a personal computer or a smartphone, or on the voting stations available in front of the Assembly Hall, in the Palais des Nations, in the hall of the CICG building, and in front of the GB room in the ILO building. The Secretariat will be present at these 3 locations to provide any assistance needed. There will be one voting session with one vote to cast, and you will be asked the following question: are you in favor of suspending certain provisions of the conference standing orders as set out in document D1 for this session of the conference? Once the selection between yes, no, or abstention has been made, delegates will be asked to confirm their vote and will have a last opportunity to review their votes. The votes will be definitely cast only upon clicking on Submit Ballot. So it will be all very clear. I remind you that the vote will be opened, as the President said, tomorrow morning at 10. It will be closed at 5 p.m., so it will leave plenty of time for the delegations to get organized, including those for which registration is still ongoing. The results will be announced by the President to the plenary the first thing in the morning of Wednesday when the plenary reconvenes at the Tempus building. Thank you, Mr. President.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bermioli. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now concluded the administrative work of this session, so I would like to make a few remarks about the work that we will undertake in the conference over the next 2 weeks.
Señor
Director General Gilbert Ungbo, delegates, staff and advisors of the ILO, guests, ladies and gentlemen, we come before this International Labour Conference at a decisive moment for the world of work, for our democracies, peace, and the future of millions of workers around the world. We live in an age of deep change which are redefining the world of work at an unprecedented pace. The swift growth of artificial intelligence, as well as the growth of the platform economy and the digitalization of labor relations, are not only changing the way in which we produce and work, but also the way in which profit opportunities, power and rights are distributed in our societies. The major debate of our times is not a technological one. It is above all a deeply political and basically human one. The Director General's report sets this out clearly. The future of work will not only be defined by technological progress, but also by the political, institutional and social decisions which we adopt collectively. We fully share his vision. Artificial intelligence can contribute to increasing productivity, enhancing services, widening opportunities and strengthening capacities. But at the same time, it can make inequalities deeper, jobs less secure, rights weaker, and increase economic concentration unless there is democratic, transparent, and human-centered governance. That's why social dialogue, collective bargaining, and tripartism are not just watchwords from the past. They are the strategic need for the present and the future. And it's in this context in which the multilateral environment, the ILO, is incredibly relevant and has a unique ability to promote dialogue, build consensus, and defend the fundamental principles of decent work. I come from Uruguay, a country in which trade union freedom is fully exercised, in which collective bargaining is a vital tool for building agreements between workers, employers, and the government, and in which social dialogue is part of our democratic identity. This tradition has enabled us to strengthen labour institutions, promote social justice, and find consensus to address the challenges faced by the world of work. And that's why, for my country and for me personally, it's a huge honour to assume the presidency of this, the 114th International Labour Conference. This is an office which holds high responsibility, but which we assume with commitment and deep respect for the organisation. We deeply value the historic and political significance of this centuries-old institution built on the belief that lasting peace can only be built on the basis of social justice. And it's against this backdrop that we will pay special attention to the agenda and the debate on decent work in the platform economy. Digital platforms are a growing reality of the global labour market. Nevertheless, millions of workers continue to face employment in the informal economy, a lack of social protection, uncertainty concerning their fundamental rights. There's no true innovation if technological progress is based on insecure jobs or whittling away labour rights. Technological development must go hand in hand with legal frameworks which ensure decent work, effective social protection, algorithmic transparency, and unwavering respect for fundamental labour rights. Similarly, we'd like to highlight the pivotal place for gender equality in this debate. Women continue to face levels of job insecurity, the gender wage gap, and the unfair burden of care work. The technological revolution cannot be used as a basis for exclusion and marginalization. History has shown that technological progress on its own has never guaranteed social progress. Democratic institutions, workers' organizations, social dialogue, and international cooperation are the tools which have enabled us to transform economic growth into rights and collective well-being. Those of us taking part in this conference are not mere bystanders to the changes redefining the world of work. We are the lead players of our time, and it's our historic responsibility to guide these changes towards greater social justice. We must ensure that innovation, digitalization, and new forms of organizing work are translated into more rights, protection, equality, decent work, strengthening our democracies and social cohesion at the same time. In times of global uncertainty, the ILO continues to be a vital place for building consensus, defending rights, and putting people at the heart of development, which must be sustainable and viable. Thank you very much.
Prendo el micrófono primero. Distinguido delegado.
Distinguished delegates, it's now a great honor for me to give the floor to Mr. Gilbert Ungbo, Director General of the ILO and Secretary General of this 114th session of the conference, in order to give us his vision on the work of the conference and to present his report.
Excellency, Honorable Minister Juan Castillo, President of the International Labour Conference, Her Excellency Ambassador Nahida Sobhan, Government Vice President, Ms. Kristen Kaufman, the Employer Vice President, Mr. Geraldo Martinez, Workers Vice President, Honorable Ministers, Delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by welcoming you all to this 114th session of the International Labour Conference, and by congratulating the President and the Vice Presidents on their election. As the President mentioned, we meet at a time of profound uncertainty. The global economy remains fragile, and the crisis in the Middle East has emerged as a major source of risk for workers, for enterprises, for communities in general. Seafarers in the Strait of Hormuz, migrant workers in the Gulf countries, agricultural workers in southern Lebanon, and workers and enterprises across several sectors in Iran, among those mostly directly affected. The ILO, we moved quickly to assess the implications of this crisis for the world of work. Our latest employment and social trends updates shows that its effects are already spreading beyond the region through higher energy prices, as we all know, supply chain disruptions, weaker investment, and pressures on migration and remittances. In an already slow-growing global economy marked by persistent decent work deficits, the consequences could be significant. Under a prolonged oil shock scenario, we predict global hours worked could fall by the equivalent of 14 million full-time jobs this year and 38 million next year, with labor income losses reaching up to $3 trillion by 2027. The impact could be particularly severe in the Arab states, with spillovers across Asia and the Pacific. We know very well many governments have acted swiftly. Yet, coordinated and sustained measures remain essential. Strengthening social protection, supporting micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and preserving jobs will be key to preventing this shock from becoming a lasting setback for decent work. This crisis is unfolding in labor markets already under strain. Progress in job quality has stalled. Informality affects more than 2.1 billion workers, and the transition to better quality employment has slowed. And if the Middle East crisis continues to weaken jobs, incomes, and livelihoods, more workers and enterprises could be pushed into informality with greater risk of child and forced labor. Alongside these challenges, we are facing a transformation of a different order, the artificial intelligence. AI is reshaping how work is organized, how value is created, and how decisions are made at an unprecedented speed and scale. It is, in this context, a moment of choice, harnessing artificial intelligence for decent work. The central message is quite clear. The future of work will not be determined by technology alone, but by the policies, the institutions, and the social dialogue that guide it. The choices we make today will determine whether AI broadens opportunity and shared prosperity or deepens inequality and insecurity. Such choices include investing in skills, strengthening labor and social protection, supporting micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and upholding fundamental principles and rights at work. This is ultimately a social and political choice about the future we want. Workers everywhere must be able to share the productivity gains generated by AI. Those gains must be distributed fairly through better wages, stronger labor protections, and more inclusive growth. Collective bargaining will remain essential alongside AI governance grounded in transparency, grounded in accountability and human oversight. This transformation also has a critical development dimension. Countries at different levels of development must not be left behind. They should be able to benefit from AI as a driver of convergence, as a driver of job creation, as a driver of structural transformation and decent work. This is why my report proposes a strategic agenda built around 4 pillars: rights, employment, skill, social protection, and social dialogue. I really hope that this conference will provide an opportunity for constituents to share their experiences, exchange ideas, and learn from one another as we navigate this transformation all together. Through our discussions, we can help chart a common path toward that harnessing the potential of AI while ensuring that innovation advances decent work, inclusion, and social justice. Excellencies, today's crisis and transformations remind us of the enduring relevance of our founding principles. Let us recall, as stated in the preamble of our Constitution, lasting peace can be established only if it is based on social justice. I don't see this as a mere principle. It is a call to action. Economic instability, inequality, and exclusion are not only social challenges, they are threats to peace. The Declaration of Philadelphia gave this vision its full meaning. Labor is not a commodity. Freedom of expression and association are essential for social progress. Poverty anywhere constitutes a danger to prosperity everywhere. And all human beings have the right to pursue their well-being and development in conditions of freedom, in dignity, economic security, and equal opportunity. International labor standards gave expression to that vision. They remain essential to realize social justice, providing stability in times of uncertainty and direction in times of change. This is why we must focus not only on the number of jobs, but on their quality, on rights, representation, security, equality, and inclusion. I welcome the growing engagement of international financial institutions and multilateral development banks with the jobs agenda and their cooperation with the ILO on the quality dimension of employment. Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, this year, the conference's agenda provides us with an opportunity to address major challenges thanks to tripartite dialogue. The conference will proceed with its standard-setting discussion on decent work in the platform economy. This is a vital stage for responding to the new forms of work and to close protection gaps. It will also hold a recurrent discussion on social dialogue by focusing on how to make it more inclusive and effective in full respect for trade union freedoms and collective bargaining. The debate on equality between women and men will address the structural obstacles which continue to stymie progress, whilst reaffirming our joint commitment to build societies where equality, dignity, and opportunities are accessible to all women and men. The conference will also examine my report on the situation of workers in the occupied Arab territories, underscoring the importance of recovery based on jobs and rights. The International Day to Eradicate Child Labour will give us an opportunity to speed up progress following the commitments that we took in Marrakesh. And lastly, social justice remains at the heart of our mission. The Global Coalition for Social Justice continues to grow, reflecting our joint commitment to more inclusive labour markets.
Ladies and gentlemen, the same sense of purpose guides the ILO itself. In a rapidly changing world, we must ensure that our organization remains agile, remains effective and responsive, while continuing to advance social justice and decent work. Our reform agenda is strengthening delivery while preserving our unique normative mandates, supervisory system, and the tripartite structure. Reform is not about changing who we are. Reform is not about changing who we are. It is about strengthening our ability to fulfill our mandate in the context of the wider UN reform. As we adapt to new realities, we remain firmly anchored in the values and the principles that have guided the ILO for more than a century. Above all, our strength lies in our people. In this context, I wish to express my deep appreciation to ILO staff for their professionalism, their resilience, and their unwavering commitment during a period of significant change and, unfortunately, of uncertainty. Social dialogue must also remain at the heart of our own effort. I remain fully committed to maintaining constructive engagement with the staff union and to ensure that change is guided by dialogue and our shared values. The world of work is changing rapidly, yet the values that united us endure. If we remain faithful to those values while embracing change with confidence and purpose, the ILO will continue to be a beacon for social justice, a trusted partner for all the constituents, and a driving force for decent work. I wish you all fruitful deliberation and a successful conference. Thank you so much.
Gracias, director, por
Thank you very much, Director General, for sharing your vision with us and highlighting the importance of taking a proactive role in developing artificial intelligence in the world of work. We all hope that the social dialogue that will be taking place at the conference this year will, according with the principles outlined in your report, may enable us to manage the risks and take the opportunities that AI offers, fully in line with the ILO mandate for decent work. The future of the world of work should promote social justice and lasting peace in accordance with the mandate of this organization. Delegates, I now have the honor to give the floor to the chair of the governing body for 2025-2026, Mrs. Anush Kava. She will be presenting her report on the activities of the governing body during her term. The report has been published on the conference website. That was the 13th of May, 2026, and it carries the reference 1A. Ms. Kava, you have the floor.
Monsieur le Ministre.
Minister Castillo, President of the 114th session of the International Labour Conference, ladies and gentlemen, worker and employer vice presidents, Director General Wongbo, Secretary General of the conference, ministers, Your Excellencies, delegates, Kathleen, Matthias, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, as chair of the governing body of the International Labour Office, it is my honour to present to you Report 1A, which reports on the work of the governing body for the period 2025-2026, since the last session of the International Labour Conference. This report covers the work of its 354th, 355th, and 356th sessions. The objective of the report is to keep the tripartite constituents of the organizations informed of the main discussions that have been held, the guidance given, and the decisions taken over the last year. I would like to raise the spirit of responsibility, rigor, and commitment that the government, employer, and worker members of the governing body have demonstrated. Our debates, often related to complex, sometimes sensitive matters, nevertheless, they were held in a spirit of respect for tripartism, which is the unique strength of the ILO. I'm not going to try and give you all the details of the report. I would rather like to emphasize a few points which give you the main thrust of our work and highlight their links with the matters before this conference. The governing body, first of all, paid particular attention to the institutional and strategic future of the organization in a changing multilateral environment and in a context of heightened financial constraints. It considered proposals to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization. It reaffirmed that any reform should be fully rooted in the organization's constitutional mandate, its autonomy, its fundamental principles, and tripartite governance. It also underlined that any redefinition of priorities should not limit or reduce the operational capacity of the ILO, in particular on the ground. These discussions shed significant light on the conditions under which the organization is implementing its priority and assisting its constituents. The governing body also continued its work on its own functioning and the governance of the ILO. It approved the recommendations coming from the tripartite meeting on the review of its functioning, namely rationalizing the agenda, improving time management, enhancing the quality of debates, and clarifying certain governance modalities. It also continued to consider matters relating to the democratization of ILO governance. A number of topics discussed by the governing body directly reflect the conference's agenda. The recurrent discussion on social dialogue and tripartism under Report 4 is particularly echoed in the governing body's work on the modalities of recurrent discussion. Their central role has been restated, both in order to strengthen the capacity of the ILO to promote decent work and to assure a more coherent approach to the conference agenda. Further, the general discussion on the promotion of the transformative agenda for gender equality at work under Report 6 is part of the ongoing work of the ILO's plan of action for gender equality. The implementation on the strategy relating to the elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work has also been considered, the emphasis there being placed on the importance of strengthening the lasting impact of this work through prevention, access to justice, and the development of institutional capacity. In the area of standard setting, the governing body considered the rationalization of reports on ratified conventions and the work of the standards review mechanism, reaffirming the importance of a robust, clearly defined and up-to-date body of international labour standards. This is work which more broadly nourishes the standard setting work and the oversight mechanism of the ILO, supervisory mechanism of the ILO. It's very much part of the thinking that is going on relating to the work of the Committee on the Application of Standards and the standard setting work on the question of decent work in the platform economy. So the ILO needs to continue to seek answers based on its standard social dialogue and the experience of its constituents in light of these changes in the world of work. The oversight question relating to the standards, the question of oversight rather, has played an important work in the role over the last year. A number of complaints and constitutional matters of the ILO have been considered, such as has follow-up to resolutions adopted by the conference and the governing body over recent years. These questions are not abstract. They impact freedom of association, forced labour, non-discrimination, social dialogue, the safety and the dignity of workers and employers. Work has also been carried out on the progress of the Global Coalition for Social Justice and the follow-up to the second summit on social development. With regard to the Global Coalition for Social Justice, we've taken note that it is now operational. It has mobilized a broader partnership, creating a multipartite platform which promotes policy coherence. In the area of development cooperation, the governing body approved the ILO strategy for 2026-2029 and considered the enhanced program of development cooperation for the occupied Arab territories, linked to the urgent needs of Palestinian employers and workers, and in relation to the annex to the Director General's report. The Strategy for Development 2026-2029 was taken note of by the GB, and which attached importance to South-South and triangular cooperation, partnerships with international financial institutions and the private sector, as well as strengthening a program-based approach to cooperation to enhance effectiveness and impact. Ladies and gentlemen, Report 1A reflects a dense and demanding year of work. It shows that the governing body is fully committed to exercising its responsibilities to guide, to oversee, to decide, but also to listen, to seek consensus whenever that is possible. The items on the agenda of this 114th International Labour Conference session show that the conference itself has to make that same effort. Adapt the work of the ILO to the developments in the world of work without sacrificing what has been the source of its strength for more than a century. My thanks go to the Employers and Workers Vice Presidents here and the Vice Chairs of the GB. I'd also like to thank the Director General and the Office for their cooperation throughout this long year. And it's in that spirit, President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, delegates, that I have the honour of commending to the conference the report of the Chair of the Governing Body for the period 2025-26, and I'd like to thank you for your kind attention.
Muchas gracias, señora Carvara, por su presentación.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and your report clearly bears testimony to the fact that the governing body has worked very hard in carrying out its various roles. Under your time in the chair, the governing body has adopted important decisions on the reform. Some of the discussions over the last 12 months will continue in coming months, and we will hope that the governing body will continue being so effective under new leadership in the coming year. We welcome the work that has been done by the group of representatives of workers and employers and all members of the governing body. We're very grateful for the work that has been done. Distinguished delegates, I'll now give the floor to the representatives of the employers and workers group, respectively. I'll begin by giving the floor to Mr. Matthias Torns, who is president of the employers group. I give you the floor.
President of the conference, DG, dear Vice Presidents, Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Employers Group, I congratulate the President and the Vice President on the election to lead the 114th conference. I also would like to give a warm greeting to my counterpart, the spokesperson of the Workers Group, Kathleen Pasquier, and to the chair of the governing body, Anousheh Kavar. And I would like to thank Anousheh Kavar for the extremely efficient and effective leadership running the governing body the last year. This is not yet the time to say goodbye to her, but we, from the employer side, would absolutely recognize her extreme leadership, which she has shown to us in the last year. Delegates, we meet at the moment when enterprises are operating under constant pressure, while confidence in international institutions and multilateral cooperation is also being increasingly tested. For businesses across the world, uncertainty is no longer temporary. It has become part of daily operations. Companies need simultaneously to absorb rising costs, adapt to rapid technological change, navigate geopolitical tensions, respond to increasing complex regulatory environments, and remain competitive in markets that are becoming more and more fragmented and unpredictable. For enterprises, the discussion which we are having here at the International Labour Conference are not theoretical debates. They directly shape the environment which companies face when they're doing their investment decision for business continuity and job creation. And this means they impact the opportunities for people on the ground for a decent job. At the same time, the multilateral system itself is facing growing financial and institutional pressures. International organizations have to demonstrate relevance, efficiency, and tangible impact. In this environment, institutions are not judged by the ambitions of their declarations, but their ability to provide practical and credible responses to the realities faced by societies, workers, and employers on the ground. This conference, therefore, comes at a particularly important moment for the ILO. At the time when the ILO itself is engaged in important discussions on its reform process, this conference must reflect on how to ensure that the ILO remains focused, effective, and fit for purpose in a rapidly changing world of work. For employers, a future-proof ILO is one that remains firmly anchored in its tripartite mandate, capable of adapting to evolving realities, focused on areas where it can provide real added value, and able to deliver lasting outcomes that reinforce confidence among its constituents. The litmus test is if ILO action significantly contributes on the ground to the better implementation of fundamental principles and rights at work, an enabling environment for job creation, productive employment and decent work, strong labor market institutions, and enhanced social dialogue. And an organization which is able to maintain and promote an up-to-date body of international labor standards which enjoys the support of its tripartite constituents. This reflection is taking place against the backdrop of the financial pressure of our organization. Difficult decisions and contingency measures will need to be considered very soon, already at the governing body following this conference. This further reinforces the importance of having clear prioritization for the work of this organization in line with what I just have outlined. Colleagues, the discussion before us in this conference go directly through some of the major transformations affecting labor markets and enterprises globally. Technological change, evolving business model, demographic transitions, skill shortages, the future of social dialogue, and gender equality in the labor market. Across all these discussions, employers will continue to underline a fundamental point. Sustainable enterprises remain the foundation for productive and decent employment, innovation, social protection, and long-term social and economic stability. Without successful enterprises, there can be no decent jobs and there can be no social progress. The four pillars which the DG just outlined need enterprises. Without successful enterprises, none of these pillars will succeed. President, the recurrent discussion on social dialogue and tripartism comes at a particularly relevant moment. In today's increasingly polarized world, the ILO remains one of the few spaces where governments, employers, and workers continue to seek common solutions together. This remains one of the organization's greatest strengths. But dialogue also needs to deliver results. The credibility of social dialogue depends not only on institutions, but on their ability to produce practical, balanced, and implementable outcomes. Effective social dialogue requires representative and independent social partners, trade union and employers' organizations, legal certainty, and institutions capable of responding to changing economic and labor market realities. Particular care must therefore be given to preserve the autonomy and representative of employers and worker organizations and avoid approaches that dilute established tripartite structures. The current international context also reminds us that social dialogue and tripartism remains essential for addressing complex and sensitive issues where perspectives may differ significantly across countries and constituents. In this regard, the recent advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice concerning Convention number 87 further underlines the importance of constructive tripartite dialogue within the ILO framework. As the Court itself observed, its conclusion that the right to strike is protected under Convention 87, and I quote now, does not entail any determination on the precise content, scope, or conditions of the exercise. Its implications will require careful consideration by the tripartite constituents with full respect for different perspectives and for the diversity of national legal and industrial relations systems. We therefore look forward to a constructive approach through the ILO's established governance processes, including the forthcoming discussion at the governing body in November. President, artificial intelligence, digitalization, and new business models are transforming labor markets faster than many of us have anticipated. These developments naturally create uncertainty, but they also create enormous opportunities. We should not approach these discussions with fear. We should focus on how to maximize its potential while addressing potential risks and negative impacts. The DG just said, the future will not be shaped by technological alone. It will be shaped how we invest in skills, support adaptation, and how we help workers and enterprises to manage the transition successfully. The second discussion on decent work in the platform economy will be an important test in this regard. The platform economy has created opportunities for millions of people around the world, expanding access to work, entrepreneurship, and income generation, particularly for generations which have people who have marginalized at the labor market, for people who had challenges to go into the labor market, such as youth, women, and other vulnerable groups. Digital platforms are also supporting formalization, innovation, and the growth of local entrepreneurship. At the same time, there is no single model of platform work. The diversity of business models, worker preference, legal systems, and labor market realities require flexibility and proportionality. This is why the international labor standards in this area should remain sufficiently flexible and principle-based to allow implementation in ways that reflect different national realities, different legal systems, and levels of development, while continuing to support innovation, entrepreneurship, and job creation. Employers remain committed to constructive engagement in these negotiations. However, any outcome must preserve the distinction between employment relationship and genuine self-employment, respect existing national legal frameworks, and avoid unworkable obligations that would reduce opportunities for work and undermine innovation. President, the general discussion on advancing gender equality in the world of work offers an important opportunity to focus on practical solutions that expand opportunities for women in labor markets and entrepreneurship. Employers strongly support improving women's participation and leadership in the economy. Unlocking entrepreneurship and employment opportunities for women is not only socially important, it is economically necessary. Policy should focus on expanding women's access to skilled entrepreneurship opportunities, digital technologies, and higher productive sectors. Greater attention should also be given to women's participation in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as in digital and green sectors where future opportunities will increasingly emerge. At the same time, approaches must remain realistic and sensitive to enterprise realities, particularly of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. We need evidence-based solutions, incentives, partnerships, and practical implementation. President, as a committee on the application of standards marks a centenary, this conference provides an opportunity to reaffirm the importance of preserving a credible, balanced, and tripartite supervisory system. Employers remain firmly committed to the effective implementation of the fundamental principles and rights at work, and to a supervisory system that promotes practical progress through dialogue, technical engagement, and tripartite cooperation in national realities. At the same time, the supervisory system must be objective, balanced, and firmly grounded in agreed international labor standards, facts, and evidence. We must avoid politicization and ensure that supervisory discussions remain constructive, credible, and focus on implementation and practical progress. President, the world expects this organization to deliver practical results. Let us demonstrate that even in challenging times, the ILO remains capable of building consensus and delivering meaningful outcomes for governments, workers, and employers alike. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thorns. I'd now like to give the floor to the chair of the workers group, Ms. Cataline Pasquier. Please go ahead, madam.
We are at the end of a long morning, but I hope you will stay with me during this last intervention. President and Vice Presidents of the Conference, Secretary General, distinguished delegates, my congratulations to all of you that have been elected. I look forward to our good cooperation to bring this ILO conference to good results. I also welcome Matthias Torrens as the employer spokesperson and look forward to our good cooperation. And I want to thank Anousheh Gawar, our governing body chair, for her excellent work, and again for our good cooperation, which will finish by next week, the end of next week. It's an honor to address this assembly today on behalf of the working people of the world, especially the millions without voice and protection at work. For already more than a century, they look up to the ILO as their beacon of hope for a better